Call the meeting to order. Got a color guard coming.
No. Oh, I didn't know what's going on.
She was in the restroom.
Oh, no, go ahead, Jim.
Honor guard, prepare to post colors. If I could ask the audience to stand, please. Honor guard, attention. Forward, march. Left face. Prepare to post. Post. Recover. Present arms. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Order, arms. Left face. Forward, march.
Thank you. Clerk, take the roll.
Marset.
Here.
Alms.
Here.
DeZiel. Here. Weber.
Here.
Atkins Hoggett.
Here.
Hall.
Here.
I'm here too.
I see that.
All right, we have swearing in of Police Lieutenant Jason Munich and Sergeant Andrew Waddell.
I'll go first.
Back here. Stick 'em.
Right between the flags.
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, right hand. I, Jason Munich,
I, Jason Munich,
have been appointed as Lieutenant of the Hudson Police Department.
have been appointed Lieutenant of the Hudson Police Department.
Affirm that I will support the Constitution
Affirm that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially
and will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of said office
discharge the duties of said
to the
office
best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
So Lieutenant Munich has been born and raised in the Hudson area. He left for a brief stint to the Milwaukee Police Department and rejoined Hudson in 1999. He's been actively a patrol sergeant for the last 10 years and now a lieutenant. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Andrew Waddell,
I, Andrew Waddell,
having been appointed as sergeant
having been appointed as sergeant
of the Hudson Police Department,
of the Hudson Police Department,
affirm that I will support the Constitution
affirm that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully and impartially
and will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of said office
discharge the duties of said office
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Sergeant Waddell grew up in the White Bear, Minnesota area, served our country in the Marine Corps for 4 years, then began employment with the St. Croix County Sheriff's Office and came to the Hudson Police Department in 2009. As a patrol officer, he was in charge of some animal control stuff, as well as an FTO, responsible for training some of our young officers, and has been a firearms instructor and armor for our department during that time. So again, congratulations.
Excellent. Congratulations, you guys. It's awesome to have you on board. Thank you also to the commission for a job well done. Next, we go to comments and suggestions from citizens present. Is there anybody that has anything they'd like to say? Anybody have anything they would like to say?
Darla Myers, 1098 Golden Oaks Lane in Hudson. On May 22nd, citizens for the St. Croix Valley sent a cease and desist of all defamation of the citizens for the St. Croix Valley character and reputation to City Pages. This is their response from the General Counsel, dated June 1st, 2018, from Randy Lebedoff, City Pages Star Tribune Legal Counsel. Dear Madam or Sir, I am writing in response to your letter to Pete Kotz, Mike Mullen, and Hannah Jones of City Pages, which has made its way to me. I am the General Counsel of Star Tribune Media Company, LLC, which is the owner of City Pages. I have reviewed this story, and in response to your complaint, we have removed the line, quote, citizens for the St. Croix Valley burn rainbow flags, reject refugees, and are pretty sure the Hudson schools are teaching Islam, unquote, from the online story. City Pages regrets the error. Very truly yours, Randy Lebedoff. Now I'd like to read you quotes from a joint statement by organizations defamed by the Southern Poverty Law Center dated June 20th. Editors, CEOs, shareholders, and consumers alike are on notice. Anyone relying upon and repeating its misrepresentations is complicit in the SPLC's harmful defamation of large numbers of American citizens who, like the undersigned, have been vilified simply for working to protect our country and freedoms. We, the undersigned, are among the organizations, groups, and individuals that the SPLC has maligned, defamed, and otherwise harmed by falsely describing as haters, bigots, Islamophobes, and or other groundless epithets. We are gratified that the SPLC has today formally acknowledged that it has engaged in such misrepresentations. With this significant piece of evidence in mind, we call on government agencies, journalists, corporations, social media providers, and web platforms, i.e. Google, Twitter, YouTube, and Amazon, that have relied upon this discredited organization to disassociate themselves from the SPLC and its ongoing effort to defame and vilify mainstream conservative organizations, end quotes. And that is signed by the Family Research Council, the American Policy Center, Center for the Study of Political Islam, DHS Phil Haney, Frank Gaffney, and many more, which can be found online. In the same spirit of this joint statement, the citizens for the St. Croix Valley call upon all those who have defamed and falsely accused the citizens for the St. Croix Valley as a hate group to cease and desist from defaming the citizens for the St. Croix Valley, and to publicly apologize and place an apology advertisement in the local newspaper in order to avoid potential litigation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any other comments? Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll close that portion of the agenda. Discussion possible action on consent agenda items.
To approve the regular meeting minutes of June 18th, 2018. To approve claims in the amount of $501,200.66. Details available in the city clerk's office. Contingent upon payment of any outstanding debt owed to the city and successful completion of the background check. Approve the issuance of 8 regular operators licenses for the period of July 10th, 2018 to June 30th, 2020, and 6 temporary operator licenses for the Backcountry Brew Fest on July 14th. Detailed information is available in the clerk's office. Pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 62.15, terminate the public emergency related to the repair of damaged electrical service to the street lighting on the Hanley Road project. To set a public hearing date of 7 p.m. on Monday, August 6th, 2018, for the public hearing for a zoning map amendment for 2001 Ward Avenue. To approve a certified survey map at Annabelle Way submitted by Hanson Brothers 12 LLC with the condition that any and all existing and or proposed easements be illustrated and noticed on the CSM. To approve the second quarter report of the building inspector. To approve 1 taxi driver's license for the period July 10th, 2018 to June 30th, 2019 to Elijah Omenwo for Magina Taxi Service. And to approve a temporary Class B retailer's license application for the Dance Council at the Phipps Center for the Arts for an event on August 2nd, 2018. That is all.
Move for approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve. Roll call.
Morissette?
Yes.
Alms?
Yes.
DeZiel?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Atkins Hoggett?
Yes.
Hall.
Motion's approved. Discussion possible action on request for trolley service.
I know that this
Kim?
was last at Public Safety, I believe, correct, Randy? You had,
It was, we didn't get a lot of answers, so hopefully this is the follow-up to those. And there's an issue page not on the,
nope, I didn't have anything. I wasn't sure what the status was from Public
Okay.
Safety. So maybe Kim can just let us know where you're at, introduce yourself.
Okay. Do I say my name and address?
Yes, please.
Oh, hi, Kim Benowitz, 900 Willow Ridge 1 in the town of Hudson. So, yeah, you had asked me to meet with the Safety Council, and due to many delays on our end, that didn't happen. So here I am, back again. Thank you for having me. I'm requesting your support and blessing to operate. We have gotten a permission from the Octagon House Museum for a 2-month trial to do a pickup and drop-off on 3rd Street. They thought, let's just see how this goes. It may work good for them. It might not work good for us. It might work good for us, but not for them. So we thought, trial period would be great. The last time I was here, I had verbal permission from the church next door. After the meeting, because it became more public or whatever, there were some issues and concerns. So they asked me to submit a proposal for parking. And I've followed up with them a couple times, but they had to send it out to their board or their higher powers to get that. So I do not have that as of yet. But things have changed a little bit on our end that I don't think parking is going to be an issue because we are downsizing to a smaller trolley. We're going from 23 passenger to 15. We ran into a lot of insurance problems and things like that. So, with the 15 passenger, like I said, most people will come in 2s or 3s or whatnot. So we're, looking at 7 cars potentially, maybe a little bit more. But there is ample parking, on 3rd Street and in the area. And I'm grateful that 2 of the area residents are in attendance here who are directly affected. And it would be Mary Ellen Cox, and she owns the Phipps B&B directly across the street, and Stephanie is Laburco and her husband Tony live directly behind the Octagon House Museum, and so they are directly affected too, and they have come to support the trolley in the neighborhood. let's see. So when I was invited to the safety meeting, I know it was parking, and I know it was about the church, so I hope I've answered those questions. Again, I don't know if you would like to hear if they have anything to say, or if you want to ask them a couple of questions. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer them for you. But, so I'm just here to ask for your support, and really to just, give us a try. If it doesn't work, if there's problems on 3rd Street, if there's parking problems, if there's neighbor problems, if there's anything, we would totally understand and move our location. We just thought, let's give it a try. I've been very affiliated with the St. Croix County Historical Society, so that ties in nicely with that, as well as the historic, beautiful neighborhood. So we really wanted to give that spot an opportunity first and just see how it goes. And like I said, it may not be the best spot for us. It may not be the best spot for our clients or for the Octagon House Museum, but I guess we won't know until we try it. So that's it. I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Again, I will reiterate that I support the efforts. I just wanted to make sure we address those issues. And I think legal had a question about where you're keeping the trolley.
No, my question was, though, the last time when it was a 23-passenger vehicle, you were subject to DOT regulation in terms of, inspecting the vehicle, the drivers, and so forth. What is the status with a 15-passenger?
We are not subject to those regulations, but we are going to go for them anyway. It's just a protection for us, and our insurance company is requiring it. The state of Wisconsin does not, but our insurance company is. So we'll just follow those guidelines.
So then my question for the council, last time the discussion was, well, if DOT is regulating it, does the city now doesn't have any ordinance requiring anything for this type of service. So you can leave it that way. And I think the discussion last time was, well, if you have to pass DOT regulation, that's sufficient. So now, unless the city council adopts some type of ordinance, or even registration to show proof of, like what we do for taxis, the vehicle has to be inspected. I think they do a background check on all the drivers. And
The driver's a separate license, but they have to have liability insurance, that type of thing.
Right, insurance, that type of thing. So right now, the city would not have any regulation on it, and neither does the state.
So in a hypothetical situation, Catherine, if something, God forbid, would happen, they're going to sue everybody they can, including the city then, because they're operating on our streets. And we didn't have the oversight to tell them that we needed to put those plans in place?
Well, I mean, that's just a potential, yes, the city can always be a target. That's why, and you're doing it not just for those reasons, but for public safety reasons, to know that the vehicles are safe and up to date and that there's insurance. And the insurance they carry is a benefit, is the city would be an additional insured, it'd be that type of thing. So it would be similar to the taxi license, in which they would, if they say they're going to meet those regulations, then they come in and provide proof that they've met them. On the other hand, you could argue, well, the state of Wisconsin doesn't regulate them, so why, that's the other side of the coin. You're not required to regulate them.
Why don't we give them a chance, and then we can craft an ordinance to protect ourselves, and nothing against you, but just in case, God forbid, something would happen, because we are busy downtown. There are people crossing in and out of. Ask anyone who's driven down or tried to park downtown. We need to cover ourselves.
I mean, I would envision it pretty simple, providing all the documentation that they've met DOT regulations.
What's your startup time frame, Kim?
We've missed it a couple of times. We are now looking, end of July, mid-August is really. And as I mentioned previously, downtown Hudson isn't our main route. We are going to be off a little bit off the beaten path to show other sites of Hudson. Like I mentioned before, anybody can drive down 2nd Street and see what's going on. So we would really like to stay out of as much as we can out of downtown.
How are you advertising the parking to your clients? Just on-street parking?
Correct.
Okay. So you're not needing any designated parking
No.
on our streets? Okay.
And like I said, Mary Ellen, who operates the Phipps Bed and Breakfast, she probably runs into similar situation. And
What are you asking of us? Are you asking for, I'm assuming a motion to say, yes, go ahead and do that?
to give us a chance, yes.
I'll make that motion. I don't know how you want it worded, but I do want to see a policy ordinance
Oh,
in place. But I want to give her the chance to get going.
okay, the 2-month trial, but understanding that when an ordinance is in place,
You
if
just have
the
to
council
come.
adopts it, you would need to comply.
Oh, absolutely. We're, the more we're covered, the more we can comply, the happier and safer we'll feel as well.
And again, that ordinance would just give us visibility to insurance and that type of thing?
Yeah, you'd require the vehicle inspection that we require for taxis and an current insurance certificate.
We could
And
require
the
driver
license.
background, couldn't we?
I'm not sure what we require exactly.
For the
but
drivers, I believe we do, but
I'm
we'd have
sure
to
they
check
run
on
the
that.
licenses,
Yeah.
but yeah, it would
We'll
be
check on that.
similar. And maybe I can just talk with you and talk about, and get more information on what DOT would have required.
Our hired driver is a school bus driver right now, so he has all the background checks and things like that out of Safeway. But yeah, we'd be happy to provide any of that.
Is there any special license for a 15-passenger van?
There, by the state, there is not.
Okay.
But for, like I said, our insurance, there is. And then you have to have a passenger endorsement, and you have to have 2+ years of
Oh,
commercial driving experience.
okay.
I don't think I'd want to see us require anything additional beyond that. Like if, we wouldn't want to have her incur any more costs than she already is incurring for those things. Just-
Nope, this is just in line with our taxi cab, but actually putting trolley.
Right.
Yeah, and then she
And I
coordinates with.
Yeah, why don't I just get the information from you so we have it on file? That would be some protection for the city, your insurance
Sure.
certificate and your driver's licenses showing the experience and
absolutely.
passenger endorsement.
When this process first started, I did fill out a taxi because
Mhm. Yeah,
they
'cause
didn't
that
know
was the
where to
closest
put us,
thing.
so that should be on file.
Yeah, if
somewhere.
you could just submit that information to the city and we could just,
think
just
she might-
voluntarily.
I'd have to check. I believe she already did file a taxi license application with the city. So we have
With
that.
the insurance certificate.
I would have to
and so
look and
forth.
see
Yeah,
what-
let's look and we'll
Sure.
be in touch.
Yep, okay, all right.
All right, we got a motion. Do we get a second?
I'll
Yeah,
second.
yeah.
Got a motion, a second.
Is
Any
there a
further-
specific date to go through, or just?
Just get going
Can I tell you where we start and I'll let you know?
as soon as possible.
Yeah.
He meant the end date, the
No, I'm asking
trial.
if there's an end date to the trial, or,
How about, we revisit it come winter time, what, December? Is that,
okay.
because you're probably, are you operating in the winter?
First of the year.
We plan to, yes.
Okay,
First of the year.
first of the year.
Okay.
Okay. Is that agreeable?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay. All right, any further discussion?
What's the application fee for a taxi license?
I honestly don't know.
Okay, but there is a fee for it.
Yes,
Okay.
right. So we could check on that and see.
And make it
I don't think
similar.
it's anything exorbitant.
No, I don't
It's
think
less
so
than
either, but.
$100 or less, but,
Okay.
yeah.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Thanks, Kim.
Great, thank you, guys.
Discussion on EMS ad hoc committee items. Report and recommendations from EMS ad hoc committee, RFP for a study on EMS structures to deliver EMS model, community engagement process for EMS.
No issue sheet again, just because they're
They-
doing a
They didn't
PowerPoint?
have anything ready, so.
Is there a cord for hooking up my iPad?
know if it's in the...
Is it recorded?
Brady's looking to see what's back there.
Looks like he's into the equipment count. Still can't do a presentation without an IT guy present.
I thought it was supposed to be in there. Guess I can call Brian. Thank you, Braden. I can call Brian and see if he can push him off till later in the meeting. Later meeting's fine. They have it? I don't know.
Come back to this.
Oh, they have it overnight.
Why don't we move on?
Okay.
Come back to this. Can we move on to,
Sure.
come back when they get
Sure.
there?
I'm texting Brian right now. Okay.
All right, let's see. The discussion possible action on construction of new fire department facility on Ward Avenue and selection of an architectural and engineering firm. See you wore your whites tonight.
He's asking for money, he's got a tie on.
Honorable Mayor, Common Council members, thanks for noticing. I dressed up for you, but I would like to say thank you for the Honor Guard for posting the colors.
Yep, that was nice.
Appreciate that. I'm going to kind of make this quick. It's been going on for several years. We kind of know where we're here as far as what phase we're at. We were asked to pick an engineering firm, an architectural firm. We put a committee together of finance director, economic and planning development director, building inspector, Councilmember Alms, and myself, and we spent all day interviewing 5 different engineering firms. We narrowed it down to 3, and we had asked them to go over our study that we had commissioned with 5 bugles and see if they could find any efficiencies and if they could maybe sharpen up their pencil a little bit. They came back with some alternatives. We went through those proposals and then made the suggestion of picking Brunton Architects out of Mankato. Some of the main reasons we picked them is their attention to detail and the fact that they were able to find some efficiencies. kind of stepping back, I said when we build this project, it's going to be as efficient as we can, and we want to do it as reasonable yet have a 50-year building. They've proven in some of their past fire stations that they've built that they're able to do that with a high-quality product. Brenda Malinowski and myself went down and visited one of their stations in Wyndham, and they did a really nice job on that. They did some precast construction. Also, the president and owner of the firm is a firefighter, and he really has a great understanding of flow, which is really important for fire stations, especially when you have the paid-on-call staff coming in and going. That the layout is really very important, and he has a great understanding of how to do that and a proven track record. So I guess kind of that we recommended them, and it was a consensus of everybody on the panel. So our recommendation would be to move forward with Brunton Architects and to approve their fee. Their fee is it's a percentage-based fee. I think it figured out roughly to $422,000. Again, that's based on some projected costs. That's not a hard cost, but that's their estimate of what the project cost would be. Coming in, if they would come in under, obviously it would be less. So it's strictly a commission basis percentage. So
Is there a bonus tied to them coming in for less?
no, we did not discuss that. So, and I guess I can ask if you have any questions, kind of just to kind of recap a little bit. We know why it's been decided that we need to do something for space. We have a lot of issues and some safety issues at the existing station. So, you know, my recommendation is to move forward with Brunton. But we had sent out all this information, and I don't know if any council members or the mayor have any questions in regards to the information that was sent to you. Again, this is all conceptual, so they basically took what we had already commissioned and he kind of marked it up, found some efficiencies, and I believe it was about 3,000 square feet that they were able to take off, and a lot of that was in mechanical rooms that they felt were oversized, and we could do some rooftop units that would be more reasonable. So they did find quite a bit of efficiencies without really robbing any space, losing space. So that's kind of how they came up with some of their cost savings.
Do you expect this facility to move out in the future? How far?
It's a 50-year building. I would project it for the city of Hudson to serve our needs until we would need another station in addition to that. So it would, you know, again, that kind of depends upon the growth in our geographic area and what happens with other communities. But as kind of getting back to our study we had commissioned, the GIS, this was, you know, one of the top 2 locations in the city for being centrally located for getting out from there. There may be a slight delay depending upon where the responders are coming from, but as far as being centrally located in the city, that was one of the prime spots.
It's not a concern of yours that it would just say, no way, that your response time is going to be as good or a little shy of what you're doing now, the response times, because of where it is located? Are you comfortable with it?
I'm comfortable the way it is, and part is there is no other. It's definitely our best choice, and I am comfortable where it's at, and the studies show that. Again, our response, some may be a little closer, some may be a little further. It kind of is where it is, and we have all those numbers, and again, the members also flow. Eventually, if we have duty crews or something, then it is in the definite center. But I think today, I would say numbers show that it's still a good spot.
And how are the partners? Maybe, Bill, you can answer the same question. Where are they with it? Are they okay with this proposal?
Yeah, as far as location or?
All of it, the location, the cost.
Well, I think the cost is something that's contractual, and maybe the mayor might address that, but I think would probably be more addressed in anything contractual would be closed session, I believe. So I think that would be, our initial discussions with them, they seem to be fairly favorable, but again, I really can't speak for it until we get into the contractual.
Did the fire approve this? Did you guys pass it out of committee?
Commission?
Commission.
The commission? The fire board? No.
So it's coming straight here, and then you're going to go back and say, this is what we have?
Well,
it's an advisory capacity only. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott.
yes. And I think at this point, it would, when we move forward, I guess, we would enter in discussions, and it'd be contractual, so it would be, my guess is it's closed session, and discuss it with them.
I think the other thing here, Randy, is that, correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but right now we're talking about owning it ourselves.
Right.
So we're going in, we're bonding for this ourselves and then leasing the space back. So again, the EMS board would be advisory at best.
Now this is total cost estimate. Do we factor in any money we put into it for Brenda? I don't know if, last time we talked about money from the undesignated funds within reason.
The 7 million that you're seeing, the budget, it includes whatever kind of funding mechanism that we want to do with it, and
So if we bonded for 5, we could cover the rest.
we could take 2 million out of the general fund undesignated, correct, and still be within our percentages per our policy, yes.
Any more would be a stretch.
Any more, we would want the council to feel comfortable with any more than that. But I would feel very comfortable with 2 million, yes.
And as I said, Brenda's, we've traveled a lot, seen probably 5 different station new builds, and talked to a lot of people, and I think Councilmember Elms will agree. We've pretty much done our homework, and this is as reasonable as we can do. I think initially we were talking 9 to 11, and so this number we're fairly comfortable, and they're fairly comfortable with, but they've even said it's more on acting on it now, because obviously prices can continue to go up 3 to 5% every year. Yeah. But again, that's built in there, and kind of the numbers worked out with a 5% contingency. The in-floor heat is not added into the one, which we would suggest, because in-floor heat is about $8, epoxy is about 5 or 6. It's kind of the best practice now to have the in-floor heat. Add that on, the fees, the rough estimate for the building price, and a 5% contingency fee for any, if you run into any issues, would be about $6,973,000. So that's why we kind of use that 7 million with the hope of coming in under. But the building market has been very volatile now as far as prices. So, the sooner we act, I think those numbers will be a little more accurate.
I think I support it. I agree with you. It's long overdue for us to get you in a new facility. The city's screaming for it as far as structurally and growth-wise. If I was to approve, I would like to see us bond for 5 and then use contingency of 2 is what I would suggest, in my opinion. I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I think we need to move on. It's time and do it. And how would that affect the mill rate from it had a 5 million? Well, that's 7 million, but as a 5 million bond.
20 cents, I mean, if you figure what 5/7 of 26 is, do you have that, Brenda, that number?
Yeah, 21 cents and then 20 cents.
So 21 assessed, 20 equalized.
For 5 or 7 million?
5, for 5.
How did that go?
So 7 million is what the number you have there, the 26.
Well, your issue sheet says 24 cents on 6 million. Am I reading something wrong here?
I think I did something wrong there, so I'm looking at that again.
Well, if it's 5 million, you'd be borrowing less.
It's
so
20
your mill rate-
cents. Yeah, 20 cents.
Your mill rate would be going down,
Yep.
because you're borrowing less.
Did you get those numbers from Sean?
No, I did those on my own, I should have. But it's 20 cents,
So 20 to 21 cents per thousand.
correct.
So we're looking at a 20 cents increase for a 5 million bond over what, 20 years? 10?
Correct. And we don't know how we would have to wait until we bond to see how we would structure that in. And so I'm not saying that it would be exactly 20 cents, but because of the existing bond structures, we'd have to look to see how we can work that debt in. So that would be the conservative number.
When are we looking at getting the bonding done?
Depending on what council wants to, if they want to move forward, we would look at bonding that late this fall or early next spring. As you recall, we do the 2-year capital project bonding every 2 years, and so we would be doing that in 2019. And we want to stay below the $10 million in bonding costs.
Right.
And so we would want to make sure that between 18 and 19 that we're not issuing 10 million or more in debt one of those years.
So what's your recommendation? Try to get it done by the end of the year?
If that's what council would like to do. But I'd like to look at the capital projects though too before we decide on that bonding, and that would be October 1st that you'd be seeing those numbers.
Okay, I'm curious because obviously we have to start looking at the budget
Correct.
and whether we're going to include that for 2019 or not, any debt service, right?
Correct. And that debt service, we were looking that would come on in 2020.
Okay.
Or the debt service for the fire station.
Got it.
So is there any other questions or that? And I appreciate the time and the support of the council to this point, especially Councilmember Alms has spent a lot of time through meetings and with the commission. So.
Okay.
I'd like to review the contract before, did they submit a contract?
No.
Okay. But they will if.
We'd go through the process.
So any motion should be subject to review of the contract,
Okay.
but legal review.
All right.
So Chief, I had a couple questions too. So, and this is maybe more aimed at the council than yourself, but, we've been talking about EMS and we've been talking about fire, and there may be an opportunity still, I think, to think about combining them into the same building. And I know that that's been kind of talked about a little bit in the past too. And I know that's not the preference, that hasn't been the practice with our fire department. And there's different ways you can kind of skin a cat, so to speak. So, but my question is just under the conceptual piece here, and I'm looking at kind of garage 1, garage 2, garage 3. The question would be if council felt there may be a savings advantage for the city in the long term if we were to work toward combining EMS and fire, and instead of having the two stations, kind of have them together. They could maybe, it's a bigger question and it's more of a long-term thing. But I think it's worth thinking about if this building, could accommodate both at a certain point. If there's a way that, I'm not a fire department guy, I'm not an engineer, so, but I'm just asking the question, would it make sense from sort of a policy standpoint for the city to think about combining those? If it's going to be a 50-year building, it'd be nice if sort of we could seize the opportunity, I think. But we'd have to sort of talk that through and figure that out. So I'm just sort of raising that question about thinking about the possibility of doing that. So.
Well, I somewhat anticipated that question maybe coming up, so I did talk to the architect. And I asked, at what point would it be counterproductive for us to start talking about that, knowing that EMS is doing their engineering right now, and I think within the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have their numbers back, and then I'm assuming a decision will be made on that. And I asked them, at what point can we add, say, more space or the needs? And he said, so say if we sign the contract tonight, minimum of at least 30 days before it would make any difference at all, meaning in 2 weeks, if EMS comes before you and you say, we want to add them, really it's just a matter of adding them. The price is it's fixed rate, it's percentage on the total building cost. At that point, they wouldn't have money into more than they do right now, so they could be added in, and it would be basically a per square foot price to add them in. Kind of easy to do the math on all of that, but that's kind of up to the council to decide later. So first 30 days would cost the city, and actually we'd lose zero money on it because it would have no effect on the total outcome. After that, they would be far enough along where it might have some, but that would give you time to look over the proposals and the bids and then make that decision. So to wait too much longer after that would be, there's always room later on to add on, but that would be in the initial phase, it wouldn't be an issue at all. So does that answer your question a little bit?
It does, and I want to say, I agree with Randy that I want to support the new fire station. I think we need it. I think we're overdue. I just want to make sure as we do that, we think about all the possibilities. And so that's just something I think that's worth us thinking a little bit more of, whether that's the next 30 days or however that would work, so, yeah.
Paul, if I may interject, that question has been asked a couple different times from me to them on many different occasions. My concern with EMS is the sustainability of it, and we have got the issue ahead of us to decide what we fiscally need to be responsible and do for the city of Hudson, and hopefully you guys are going to answer some of those questions. But I don't want to hold up the fire department's issue need because of the EMS.
Right, and I see potential savings to the city in combining them, so I would share that concern about fiscal responsibility. So that's kind of why I want to push this idea of possible combinations. You know, Eau Claire does combined, and St. Paul does combined.
Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, but did we not have 5 Bugles take a quick and dirty look at that? And it was $2 to $3 million to
and I think
improve
I might have
EMS as part of this building?
I might have misunderstood your question. Are you talking about combining services or sharing a facility?
I think it could be both or either, because in the long term, I think you could be talking about combining services. In the short term, you could be talking about space with sort of the floor plan or whatnot. I mean, that's a bigger question. I'm just raising the question because I think in the long run, it could help the city.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert at it, but I think it's our role to sort of ask those sort of questions.
Last number when combining was $10 million from 5 Bugles.
And we're at the point now where these numbers, you can pretty much put a square foot number and add 7.25 and then figure their FF&E, and it would probably be maybe a little bit less. And I was talking of St. Croix EMS and Hudson Fire under the same building, and I think you were talking maybe having one combined service, which is, you know, we haven't really studied that. It's, and there's, and maybe they're going to address that later. There's multiple different service delivery models. So it's kind of two different questions, but it could be added within 30 days, and that would not be an issue. So.
Right. All right. Do we have a motion?
I'll move that we approve the request to go with, who do we got here? What's the name of the?
Brunton Architects. Brunton
Architects for the proposed fire department facility on Ward Avenue.
Second.
Conditional on?
Legal review.
Conditional on legal review on the
Okay,
contract.
got a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you very much. Also, I think they're working on the rezoning, and for that, so it should be rezoned prior to that. I think Mike's on that.
So the public hearing on that is at the next council meeting.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
August.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Braden has the cord now that he needs, I believe.
Okay.
I took your pen.
We're ready to go.
Mine aren't working. I brought
It's just the
two.
way. It just rolls over.
Okay. Well, probably won't have as many answers as everyone would love us to have. Certainly not going to be able to answer your question totally, Paul. We all have our opinions, but some of it is just opinion. We're going to start with some background. You know, what have we done and what have we learned? It's been about 8 months since this ad hoc committee was commissioned by the council. So first, background, we have received input from a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. I was writing down and said, okay, we received it by presentations, by conversations, by phone calls, by meetings, by coffee shop, sit-downs. We've heard a lot of things. We had people make formal presentations to us on their own at our request. So we've looked tried to look at a lot of different things. The community is full of opinions on how this should be done, as most of us know. We've consulted with several firms. This has been unofficial consulting in that we haven't paid anybody anything for this consulting yet, but talking to people who are experienced in the field. Lakes Region EMS, a very successful nonprofit EMS in our area, run a really, really nice operation, and just wanted to see how they do things. It's worth a trip to go there. Safe Tech Solutions, John Becknell is a nationwide national consultant in the area. He also does consult with the Lakes region. He's very familiar with them as well. So, but he's offered us several ideas on how we should proceed, what we need to know in order to make this decision. The City of South Milwaukee did a large referendum on public safety, and so we've looked at how did they do that to get that referendum passed. Joyce has talked with both the Mueller communications person, who was their consultant for community
For the referendum.
for community engagement, basically, and then the city administrator for that same process, and also checked in with West Central Region Planning, looking for resources that we could use that's familiar with us. Unfortunately, they recommended 5 Bugles, which is not unfortunate, but that's an outfit that we are familiar with. We've talked with that linked to Dave Madison, who's the interim director at River Falls EMS. He works for Alina, runs a large EMS operation in Minnesota. So very clued, and we were looking a lot at what can we do together? How do we work together? You know, what are the possibilities there? What are they doing to improve their operation? They have the same issues that we do. Talked with the Hudson's School District, Tracy Habish-Alin. We all experienced the community engagement process they went through to get $90+ million referendum approved after several failed referendums. So the process of how you communicate with people and get the buy-in is really part of one of the things we're looking at.
And she has certification in the community engagement process. She recommended that we talk to Ann Carroll, who's a community engagement consultant that did a lot of the work for the for the school district. And then when they were ready to go on without Ann, then Tracy led that initiative.
Would you also talk about the EMS Regulatory Board, your conversations there?
Oh, yeah. Well, I talked to Holly Hammond. So Minnesota does things differently. They do a lot of the studies, and so I talked to Holly, and she recommended that we look at a couple of studies that were done in Minnesota. But of course, things are a little bit different in Minnesota. They've got a higher Medicaid reimbursement rate and some different issues. But it was helpful to look at some of their studies as well.
We also did some reading for looking at the strategic plan for St. Croix EMS, which was written about 5 years ago and needs to be redone. So just to give us a basis on what had been done. The fiscal analysis, just a lot of this is just getting us grounded in the whole issue. We looked at multiple service structures, and we did that as part of our committee responsibility. And I've got a stack of papers like that I've read some in detail, some I've kind of said, okay, what was the conclusion? But basically, how different ways, or how all the different ways that could be done. We created a term called structures to just give us some definition. And that's, to me, these are structures: a hospital ambulance-based system, a fire EMS system like you were talking about, where they actually are both combined, a municipal ordinance structure. This is what we're calling our St. Croix EMS is a municipal structure. And there's combinations of those. So there are a lot of different ways of getting that done. But structure is organizationally how we deliver the service model. And we're going to talk about the service model in a little bit, what that is. We studied the assessments that Joyce referred to, the River Falls assessment, one from St. Paul that they just had done recently, Lake City, Minnesota, Plainview, Minnesota, towns a little more our size. And so tried to glean things from there. Some of what we learned, and this is old news to some of you, but Medicare and Medicaid reimbursements are lower than the cost of service. Medicare is about 50%, Medicaid is about 25% of the cost of service. And over 50% of our runs fall in that category. So, and that's an increasing number. We've more and more runs, we're getting paid less and less. There is a federal program out there that we could possibly, the state of Wisconsin could possibly participate in, which would get us a couple $100 for a Medicaid run, $40,000. Not a drop in the bucket, but still not what we need. And we anticipate Medicare runs continue to increase in volume as we are adding more and more senior facilities. We can expect to see more of that same effect. Costs continue to rise. Our services gets more and more sophisticated, and with that sophistication comes the expensive training, the expensive equipment, and some of it is very sophisticated, has to be updated, so we can expect costs to rise.
Of course, the Medicare and the Medicaid reimbursements are staying flat.
Interfacility runs, transfer runs are important. So we really have to, for the financial piece, they add significantly to that, and so that became part of what we call the model. Levy limits are a huge issue. Hudson is starting to say we can see our levy limit based on the state law. North Hudson is there. Town of Hudson is almost there. So we have our partners who are up against limits as to how much they can raise. That's a big part of the issue. What we think we learned. This is our current perception of community wants. They want reliable service, and we have a more or less a definition of what that means. They want accountability. They want the community, whatever the service is, to be accountable to the community, to the communities. Community ownership. That's what that means is not quite clear, but that's a term that we created. They want financial stability. They don't want to see this thing to continue to rise, continue to escalate far beyond our ability to support it. They'd like the community subsidy to be stable, another way of saying the same thing. But financial stability could mean that we don't have to increase our prices 5% or 10% every year for an ambulance run. And we are in that process now. We're starting to increase every year, and we have not. High employee engagement. They want this organization to be part of this community.
Well, one of the questions is, with the financial stability piece, is the community subsidy, so the per capita cost. If we want to keep the cost of that, all right, so with the Medicare and Medicaid runs, we cannot bill any more than what Medicare and Medicaid pay. And that's about 60% of our runs. So the other 40% we're billing at a rate that's, of course, higher than what the service costs. So then, in order to keep those rates reasonable, we've got to have the community subsidy.
The model that we've agreed on is that we're talking about full-time on-site staffing of 2 ALS ambulances 24/7. And on-site means, and it's the model that we're starting to work towards, that we just took the first step this year. It's Model 1 Plus, as we talked about 5 models last year, but it's a takeoff on that. It would be 1 paramedic, 1 EMT per ambulance, 48-hour work week. We'd be talking about 7 paramedics and 7 EMTs, full-time employees. That's what it would take to provide the kind of service that we're hearing the community wants. And
okay. That got cut off, and this one got cut off, so finish the slide, and then we'll go back to the other slide.
We need casuals for backup, for vacation, for sick, for the 3rd ambulance route. We've run several times in the last few months. We've used the 3rd ambulance. So it's, we can't we're saying we still have to have part of the casual process there.
Okay, up here, under high employee engagement, there was also another line, affordable billing rates.
Other things that we've learned, and that our wages and benefits are not competitive with the metro area
And I would
employers.
disagree with that. The wages may not be, but you're not going to find our benefits in the private sector.
Yeah, I think you're going to find that's if you
Well,
go into
I've
Woodbury.
had employees that have left EMTs because I've asked them about the benefits. They said benefits don't pay the rent.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I guess we need to investigate that, because I keep hearing
That's
that.
not saying benefits don't pay the rent, doesn't mean that benefits aren't valuable. You know, if you're talking to a 25-year-old, that's true. If you're talking to a 45-year-old.
I mean, I guess I would like to
see.
see the data on that, because most private sector employers don't have the benefits that public
We're
sectors
not talking
do.
about private sector necessarily. We're talking about other municipalities and other structures. So there's a whole broad range.
Yeah. I guess I'd like to see that, just because
Okay. And the other thing, the significant thing that we learned, and this has bothered me for some time, is that why isn't the volunteer and part-time model working? And it's a nationwide issue. It's not just here, it's not just Wisconsin, it's not Minnesota, it's across the entire nation, that the volunteer model does not work for EMS. Number of reasons. One that we could look at here locally is that we make 2,000 calls. Roughly, that's the number we're bouncing around. The fire department makes 400 calls. So there's a difference in the amount of time that's required, the amount of time you would have to take off from your job, or you would have to be tied up, invested. The training, as we get more and more capable, as the capabilities are available, it takes more and more training, more time for our volunteers to be there. It's also a high-stress job, so it's.
And
are you going to
higher risk too?
Yeah. Yes. Getting back to the structures, we did enough work to know that there are advantages and disadvantages. In fact, in the strategic plan that was done 5 years ago, there is a list of 5 different structures and how they compare. And depending on who we're talking with, or whose website you're looking at, or what blog you're reading, you get entirely different opinions about what works and what doesn't work. Some swear by the fire EMS model combined. Others say the cost of getting into that is extremely high, because it's depending on where you're coming from. If you have professional firefighters, it's not a big deal. If you have volunteer firefighters, it's a big deal. So there are things like that we understand there are differences. We don't know how to, in some ways, we just don't know how to package that and totally understand those things. So there are differences in cost and coverage. Economies of scale come into effect. They affect the degree of local control. If we went with a private organization, our local control would be significantly different than as if we had a municipal organization. So those are the things we have to look for.
So we need to complete cost estimates for the reliable service model, so the model that we talked about, where we've got the 7 full-time paramedics, 7 full-time EMTs, using our current wages, but also using competitive wages, so that we know how much this model would cost us to implement and to continue implementing for the next 5 to 10 years, and see where we're at there, and then convert that to a per capita rate, or convert the per capita rate to property tax rate, so that people understand how it's going to affect their taxes, if we were to continue to implement that. We need to authorize and fund the analysis of the structural and organizational options showing benefits in service, cost, and control. And so we need to have a consultant look at all of those for us, looking at with the size of our service area and the demographics, what are the what are the best options for us, and then estimating the costs of each, and doing a comparison analysis on those. And then utilize a community engagement process to find out what the community really wants and what they're willing to pay for it. So there we would need to have a consultant to guide us through that process, at least through the initial part of it, so that we do gather the information that is necessary for us to continue. Did you want to add anything? Okay.
That's good.
And then these are the committee members that we've got right now. So the questions that we have for the members, we're going to be presenting this Thursday morning at the EMS Commission meeting. And I know that one of the first questions that they're going to be asking is, what are the thoughts from the council? What does the council think of this? Where does the council want us to go?
I agree. I think we need to go out for outside counsel. Get a company that can consult, get the politics out of it, and have a third set of eyes look at it from a different angle and tell us what we need to do. If that does mean selling it, if that does mean keeping it, raising taxes is all a part of that equation. And if we have to, I think, and I'm not in favor of referendums, put it out for the people to tell us what they want.
And the community engagement process would tell us what the people want, but it would also give us an idea of whether or not a referendum would be successful if we were to run one.
So, anybody else? Opinions? Are we on the right track? You know, it's I think for Joyce and I, it's been somewhat disappointing in that we haven't gotten more done, but it's been a dang difficult issue to tackle. We're constantly bombarded with different opinions and information that are in opposition to the last opinion that you heard. So we're saying that this is one reason we need somebody to step back and do exactly what you said, Randy, is to take the politics out of it, use their knowledge of how other organizations do it, what works in this area, what it's going to take.
The one question I think you guys have to ask yourselves, and all the people that were not looking to sell it, will they accept the determinations from the consultant if we spend the money for it? Do we take action on it? Will you accept those terms? You guys have to be prepared to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it's hard to, how are we going to reach 1,200 people who signed a petition saying don't sell it? You know, we can put that out there, and I know there will be about 50 people who will respond, and I can probably tell you most of their names.
Well, and that's where they'll tell us you need to go for a referendum.
Well, but that's part of the community engagement process, is that Tracy gave us an overview of the community engagement process, and you don't just put a survey out there and just take what's given.
Correct.
You actually have to get out and go to the people. So, for example, going to Lakefront Park during one of the Music in the Park events and handing out surveys there and asking people to fill things in. In order to get a good cross-section, and then tracking demographics so that you know.
Can we pull this?
Sure.
What? Shut her off? Switch us back?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, it is. Okay. So in order to, so the community engagement process takes a lot of effort to collect a lot of data and to make sure that you're covering all the demographics. So looking at age ranges, looking at all of the different communities that are part of our service area and getting information from them. Another thing that came up was, all right, so we had the ad hoc committee meeting the other night, and then I talked to Ann Carroll, who was the community engagement consultant for the school district, I talked to her late last week. And after talking to her, you know, it's like, completely new information on how to go about this community engagement process. And what she recommended was that we develop a list of all of the questions that people have that we need to answer during this community engagement process, because there are so many questions, there are so many variables and things like that. So that's really important to the process. So if you've got questions that you think that the community engagement process should answer, then let us know. You've already said, you know, will the people accept what we come up with during the community engagement process? That's a good question. And there are many more.
One of the difficulties that we're in is that it's hard to ask people about choices when they don't have the information that says, here are the advantages and disadvantages of the different choices. And that's one of the things that we need to do. And you know, you go back and forth. If you don't have enough information out there, then you're not going to get the response may not be the one you want, sure. And it may not be based on the information. If you don't have it out there, then it's uninformed. It's not uneducated. It's uninformed about the possibilities, about the costs, about the benefits, about how we do it. You know, there are just a number of different ways, and we struggle with this, trying to find a magic silver bullet, and there is none.
Mm-hmm. So, did you engage our municipal partners in the ad hoc committee discussions at all?
We've been making reports to the EMS commission, and then they've been giving us feedback on.
Did you invite our partners in to the ad hoc committee meetings
of
to
course.
Give their feedback?
They're always
so I mean, you asked them to come in and give their feedback, and they just didn't show up?
We've always invited them to.
It's been an open process.
It's been an open
We haven't said, Tim, would you please come in and make.
I'm not talking about Tim necessarily, but I'm talking about the
just
council
community.
members or the supervisors, village supervisors.
Yeah, I think now that we've gone through some of this, that this is
closer to the point
this
of
is where
time.
we're at.
Now, yes.
I mean,
am
I hearing right?
More actively engage them, yes.
So, I mean, they've been our partners all along, and now you're ready to engage them? All right, so what's the total cost of this?
We don't know yet. And then it's probably going to be an hourly fee for some of these items.
For a consultant?
Would the next step be, I'm hearing, kind of like the schools did, where an outside consultant would look at, I mean, we have a long list of options of how it might be set up. And would they maybe look at several of them and then give us an overview of what the strengths and weaknesses and liabilities are in each one of those, and then we say, okay, we want you to do more in-depth study on maybe these top 3, and then it would be more time, in my opinion, maybe to look at that community engagement, because as Jim, you just pointed out, we can't just go to the community at this point and say, what do you want? Because we need to provide the top 3 alternatives. That's our job.
Well,
I would see.
Right.
Coming from us or coming from a consultant?
Well, coming from a consultant and then with our
So I just
blessing.
want to make sure I understand this. So you're recommending that we go to a consultant now?
Yes. 2 consultants, actually.
So-
A community engagement consultant.
So a year later, a year after Councilmember McCormick recommended to this group that we hire a consultant, you've now taken this time, the additional expense for our program at EMS. It's taken a year to come around to the same conclusion that Councilmember McCormick tried to express to you guys that you rejected. Is that right?
That the council rejected?
Yes.
Actually, I don't
Is that
remember that. I'm not quite familiar with what he said. but
There was
I
a
don't know.
motion made at that meeting to hire a consultant. I think that's what Rich is referring to.
Yep, more than a year ago. So I just want to make sure I've got it straight, that a year later, more than a year later, you're coming back with the same solution that was recommended that you guys rejected, and we've gone through all this.
Except that we have a better
and we've come
understanding.
full circle.
We have a better understanding of what is really needed here.
A consultant.
But what the consultant needs to do for us. a year ago, I wasn't clear on what the consultant really needed to do. Now I've got a much better picture of it.
Okay.
I don't think we even knew the right questions to ask at that time. And maybe
Yes.
Tom was right, and maybe we would have picked the right consultant, and that would have happened. But that wasn't the motion, the decision of the council at that time.
That was the decision of the council at that time.
This was the decision of the council at that time, was to create the ad
The
hoc.
decision was not to have a consultant. All right. So what are you looking for right now?
Well, since this is discussion only, we need opinions from each of the council members so that when we go to the EMS commission Thursday morning, that we've got some information that we can give them on how much support we have from the council on implementing this and hiring the consultants.
And I think one thing we should at least talk to the partners about too is who's going to pay for that.
Yes.
I mean, just up front so that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that they aren't thinking the city's paying for it and the city isn't thinking that everybody's paying for it, just so that's clear.
Mm-hmm.
I agree
Bill, do
with,
you have some
yeah,
opinions?
I agree with Randy. I just think that the optics are fairly narrow at this point. You know, one of the slides that you talked about was the community ownership. The perception is community wants the city to own, but I think we really need to find that out
Yes.
by reaching out to the community. I really think that, to your point, Sarah, is I think we need to give the community 3 options,
Yeah.
or whatever that
Yeah,
whatever that is. So I kind of see, however we can fast track a study, third party, somebody looking outside in, what would be some good solutions, and then see what the community is able to do or
and-
wants to do.
What Ann Carroll, the community engagement consultant, suggested was that we hire a consultant to look at the things, but then as the consultant is working on things, we get more information from the community on what the consultant has given us so that we can narrow things down or refine the report that the consultant gives us.
So are you suggesting reaching out to the community before we have solutions, potential solutions?
We need to start reaching out to the community now and asking them questions about what they're looking for. What does the, do they expect community ownership, things like that. And that's where the community engagement consultant is really important to formulate the questions on where to start with engaging the community.
I suspect that Joyce and I aren't 100% in agreement on that approach. I'm from, you got to inform them of what the options are before they can make
I
the
would
best,
agree with
the
that.
choice.
Yeah, I'm with
Or
that.
we're going to
too.
get it, or we might
It's a-
get more
It's a
knee-jerk
very
reaction. than
complex issue,
freedom.
and to go out there and just,
Yeah.
state, I think we need firm.
Well, I can tell you this, after having gone through a citywide election on that issue, just on that issue, the people out there said they want reliable service at the lowest possible cost. They wanted to make sure that they had reliable service, fully staffed at the lowest possible cost. And I guarantee you, if this information is put to the community in the most objective way, that's exactly what you're going to have come back from any consultant that you're going to pay money for. And we already had an election based upon that.
I think the consultant that we're talking about is look at the different structures on how you deliver that. And here are the advantages and disadvantages of them.
Well,
The one we
I
have.
think you know what I'm talking about, Jim.
Yeah, the one we have we have a good model now, but the question is, can we afford it, and are there better ways? So we're changing our model from what it's been over the years to a new
And
model.
you guys vote, spend the money on the consultant. I think a consultant's a good idea. Community outreach, I don't know that that's that important. Find out what your consultant has to tell you, has to say to you, but I'll guarantee you that that's exactly what the information is going to come back. Most reliable, fully staffed, lowest possible cost.
But there are pluses and minuses to all the different models. We've studied them enough to know that they don't all give you the same thing. There are disadvantages and disadvantages into what we think the community is, and all the listening that we've been doing, what we think the community was asking for. And I agree, that what you're saying is basic. That's really basic, what they do want. But do they really understand what that means in terms of what are they giving up? What do you get for this? What do you get for that? So that's the thing we don't know that. In fact, some of it we don't know yet. We've studied enough to see the differences, but not enough to know what is going to work in this situation.
Paul, do you have any comments?
I do. Do you want to go ahead first?
I just wanted to say, I mean, I think what I had mentioned earlier, having a consultant not helping us engage with community input at this point, it's too soon. And looking at a variety of plays on how to structure it, not just one way on how to structure, but looking at a variety, maybe half a dozen. Picking the top 3 and driving in up to a bunch of detail on those top 3 and stating the facts about those, and then going to the community and saying, which of these 3 do you think is going to provide the most reliable service, being fully staffed at the lowest possible cost, and why? And then engage the community. We can't just go out there and say, there's a million options, what do you guys think? Because the community isn't equipped to answer that question without us giving them the answer to the basic.
And to echo that, I think, what if the solution is an easy one, like, oh, why didn't we think of this, or whatever, and it's not contentious, as it were. Yeah. Maybe we don't need to have a consultant.
For community engagement.
For community engagement.
But we need someone to help us with this initial,
right.
Drill it down a little.
Okay, so what you're saying is start with the consultant for the study of the different options. And then, if needed, then we bring in the community engagement consultant. But
if one of them comes out so obvious that we all agree that it's the way to go, that.
Okay.
All right, I think we got it. I think everybody's got.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, I ran in the April election as well, and my perception was not the same as
You didn't run citywide, Paul.
Correct. So I'm speaking for the people of District 3.
Yeah, and I don't know that your election was just about that issue. It was quite clear, quite apparent that citywide, the mayor's race was just about that issue.
Can I finish? Sorry, can I finish?
Go ahead.
So I went door to door in District 3. This was the #1 issue I ran on. I had conversations door to door with people. I would say 9 out of 10 people said, we want the city to own the ambulances. They wanted public ownership. There were a few that had really good conversations and reasons why they didn't. But as far as District 3 went, it was overwhelming. They said, we want to keep our ambulance service public. I know that cities that have privatized it have not been happy. And the reason is because when people make a profit off ambulance runs, you're going to get charged a whole lot more when you use those ambulance runs. So cities that have sort of abdicated that to private ownership, it has not been pretty for the people of those cities. I ran on public ownership. I'm just going to say that's what I'm about. So I would love to see us find ways to make it work. I don't have all the answers. You guys have put a lot more study in than I have. But from District 3's perspective, they were very clear with me. They do not want to lose their public ambulance service.
All right, so a couple things. Number one, not the options that were brought up in that campaign were not for profit. They were not for profit.
I'm just speaking about
you
the
may have been,
conversations.
and I do know that there was information out there that said that this is a for-profit entity, and it wasn't. Keep in mind also, I was door knocking in your district as well. And that wasn't the same conversation I was having with people. That's all about the information that they have available to them and how it's presented to them. So I was over there in your district too.
Yeah. And that's fine.
And those weren't the same conversations I was having with people.
And we have.
So I'm just saying, perception is a little bit different here. all right? I don't think that we can be saying that our perception is that the public at large is wanting a municipally owned entity. I'm not saying that that's not the case, but that's not the result of the last election. Anyway, I think that we've had enough conversation on this. I think we've all got a pretty good idea of the direction that we're going to be going. I expect that in the next meeting, you guys will probably have this hammered out and how you want it to look, and everybody here will have an opportunity to figure out, kind of think about it themselves and figure out how the motions are going to go. Thank you, guys. Appreciate your time and energy, effort. All right, where did we leave off?
6D.
6D, discussion and possible action on ordinance 16-18 to annex parcel 040-1025-70-0000 and 040-1026-30-0000 from the town of Troy to the city of Hudson Lee Family Trust. Michael.
Thank you. So obviously at the last meeting, the council approved moving forward with the annexation agreement and directed city attorney and myself to draft the ordinance, which is in front of you for consideration tonight. Prior to the meeting and today, we got payment for the deferred assessments, as well as the 5-year tax payment to the town of Troy, as well as signatures from the current owners and the applicant on that annexation agreement. With that, I would recommend that.
I will move to suspend the rules.
Second.
A motion second to suspend the rules. Roll call.
Morissette?
Yes.
Alms?
Yes.
DeZiel?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Atkins, Hockett?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Motion's approved. Rules are suspended.
Move to adopt ordinance 16-18.
Second.
Got a motion second to adopt. Any discussion?
17-18, did you say?
16-18
Oh,
is the
16-18, okay.
Oh.
Okay.
I did have one to point out. There's typo on the second page of that.
Yep, Parsons.
So, and the last section should be numbered section 7, and then you need to clarify in section 5 which section 6 you're referring to.
Okay.
Everybody got that? Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
This one was postponed.
E was postponed. All right. Discussion possible action on resolution 09-18, resolution approving the project plan and establishing the boundaries for and the creation of tax incremental district number 6, city of Hudson, Wisconsin.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Sean Lenz here with Ellers to walk us through the proposed downtown TID. He has a handout as well as a PowerPoint that we'll put up. So we've been working on this for longer than I've been here. It's been discussed. So we also presented to the school board this afternoon at 5:30. They asked some questions, had some concerns. They're obviously just anxious to hear what the city council's direction is. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sean.
Do you have enough? Enough.
Thanks, Mike.
So it's not just the iPad, so.
We're not the only ones that have problems with this.
Catherine Kavanaugh,
Pardon?
Supreme Court.
Oh. Email me. Did you email me?
Stand up. I couldn't be clean. I'd be X-rated. I couldn't do clean stand-up.
Oh, come on now.
I couldn't do clean stand-up. Yeah.
I'm still.
Jerry, you having fun yet? Aren't you learning?
That was a good use of
Is it-
downtime during the meeting.
Sean, is it the same as the handout?
We're good.
Yeah, let's just go through the handout.
As Mike said, we've been working on the creation of tax increment district number 6 for a time here, and the presentation includes some background information, just how tax increment financing works. And I know you have a couple new council members, so I thought it might be a good idea to go through that. Again, I know this is repetitive for some of you that have been through this before. And where I'd like to start with that objective is on page 3. So the first step that we make in looking at creating a tax increment district is looking at a boundary for that district. The historic downtown area is the proposed boundary for tax increment district number 6. And when we put that area together, we also look at and do a calculation of what is the current taxable value of the property in the proposed tax increment district. That's called the base value of the tax increment district. And the base value is important because that value, when a district is created, ends up being frozen. And why is it frozen? It's frozen because taxes on that base value continue to go to all the taxing jurisdictions, just as it always has in the past. So the city gets its share, Tech College, county, and school district. But when the district is created, that value is frozen, and any new value from new development, redevelopment, inflation is captured and designated as increment value. And increment value is taxed at the same rate as the base value, but instead of going to the county, the school district, the tech college, and the city, taxes on the increment value all go to a special fund that the city can use for paying back expenses related to promoting development and redevelopment in a particular area. And the reason that the model can work is it's really an effort by the city to initiate economic development and redevelopment, and using TIF gives you a funding source to be able to pay that back. Otherwise, you're in the position of having to just use only the city's revenues to try to support that development. But in the end of the day, all the taxing jurisdictions end up being the beneficiary of that additional tax base, that new increment value. And at the end of the life of a tax increment district, which in this case, the one we're talking about today, is 20 years, it can close sooner than that, but maximum of 20 years. At the end of the life, that captured increment value then shifts back And now all taxing jurisdictions are benefiting from it. The city, general fund of the city, and the school district, tech college, and the county. Okay. Before we move on, any questions on kind of how that model works, how the logistics of tax increment financing work? Okay, great. So the rest of the presentation, well, one more side, but most of the rest of the presentation is about specifics of District Number 6. Before we get there, page 4 is a list of the type of expenditures that the city can spend on tax increment district eligible expenses. When I say tax increment eligible, it means we can use that revenue in that tax increment district number fund to pay for. So we can't use that revenue to pay for general expenses of the city for your general operation. We can use it for public works and improvements, land acquisition or write-down costs, incentives or cash grants, some utility infrastructure, environmental remediation, those sort of costs that are related to the tax increment district or within a half mile of the tax increment district. So again, this special revenue fund that's created, it's really a fund directed toward those development, redevelopment approaches and goals of the city in this particular area. And in this case, it's that historical downtown. Okay? All right, so if we flip over to page 5, I've hit on a couple areas that I wanted to go over with the council. And I should mention, this handout that we're going through today is a summary of the larger project plan that I believe you all got. So all this information is in that project plan. This is more of a summary of it, better for presentation purposes. On the middle of page 5 is the historic downtown area of Hudson in your comp plan. This is the area identified. In that comp plan also was a goal of creating a tax increment district in this area at some point. So I think you're probably all very familiar with it. This area, as we looked at it, there are different types of tax increment districts. The district called a mixed-use tax increment district was the best fit with this area. So it's an area that has some residential, has some commercial, public spaces are in this area, and industrial is in this area, all of those. So it really is a good fit with what is categorized as a mixed-use tax increment district. Big picture purpose of the district is promoting development and redevelopment, a lot more probably focused on redevelopment in the historic downtown area. And what we see as our tools for the city to do that is a combination of development incentive as well as improvements to the public infrastructure, public improvements in the area. So those two factors we believe will be inducements to help build and redevelopment, or encourage redevelopment within this historic downtown area.
Sean,
We'd like,
quick question.
Sure, yep.
Would it benefit us to move the district line down to St. Croix Street on the bike trail along the river? Or is there no benefit to the city?
Is that north of it? We had talked a little bit about going a little bit outside, a little north, a little up the hill, some other things. The idea of the half mile, I think, Randy, gives us some flexibility there.
Yeah, and also the idea was to follow that boundary that was identified in the comp plan as closely as possible.
Well, I'm just looking at the park study that it would include that.
Yep.
So the half mile covers that?
Yep, as long as we identify those within that project plan for the park, yeah,
Okay.
we can do that. Yep.
Thanks.
No, good question. So we're really looking to take the existing tax base of the historic downtown area through the public infrastructure, through the incentives, increase that tax base, increase the captured increment value in that area. And also another goal is providing new and expanded employment opportunities in this area as well. As I'd mentioned, the mixed-use type of district requires that we have 50% of the area meet that finding. We do meet that with this proposed boundaries. And then on the right side of the page, you'll see a list of different expenditures that are included in the project plan. Mike just talked about that. All listed there, again, business incentives, often categorized as cash grants, some improvements related to Second Street, waterfront upgrades and improvements, stormwater improvements, parking meters and parking solutions. All total, we've got projects expenditures up to $34 million. As you'll note in the bullet just below that, though, we believe some of those costs, primarily related most likely to the waterfront improvements, are not going to likely be paid entirely out of this tax increment district. We do see, based on our preliminary projections of the increase of value, the hopeful increase of the increment value there, we'll probably need to look at outside funding and maybe citywide funding as well as part of that. Okay. Any questions on page number 5? Okay. Page 6. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
With the goal, I read all of this, but I'm just seeing that the goal, increase tax base and provide employment opportunities. Is there anything worked in the other part of the bigger goal to increase residential opportunities or places for people to live in that area?
So, I can start, Mike. Some of the projects that we've had preliminary discussions with development groups have been those types of projects.
Okay. But it's just not a stated goal with our TID district?
We could add that, and it certainly has been a part of the discussions.
Okay.
And there's a certain percentage of housing that's allowable.
Yeah, in this type of district, no more than 35% of the whole area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if we go over to page 6, and this partly goes to the last question, what you see on page 6 are some preliminary potential developments and also some forecasted future developments / redevelopments in this area. River City Center, some business improvements, or I'm sorry, business incentives, trying to attract a business into the downtown area, as well as a new building. There's a group, the Girard Group has had a couple different potential preliminary proposals about mixed use with some residential, some other uses as a part of it. And then in the future, we do think with the area that we're including, there's going to be some other incentive areas that will come up over the implementation period of the district. The district has a 20-year life, and the first 15 years of that 20, the city can enter into expenses trying to promote additional development and redevelopment in the city. So we've got a few that the city has been working on that are percolating right now, but we also see that over the 15-year expenditure period, there'll be other options and opportunities that come forth. Okay? Now, this, sure.
Is that the incremental value?
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. So what you see here with the different projects and the annual total would be the projected incremental value of about $62 million over the life of the tax increment district. So this would be the value up and above what is currently taxable value in the historic downtown area.
What is the base value?
It is, I want to say it's about $66 million currently. And we do have the new values come out at the end of this month, early August, so we're in a bit of an in-between, but I think it's going to be right in that ballpark.
And can individual business owners in this district come to the city and say, how can I get in on this?
Yeah, so I'd mention a couple things about that. So the section here, other future redevelopment, on page 6. That would go to what you're suggesting, and certainly that opportunity would be there. Now, just so the council's aware, and I mentioned this at the Plan Commission public hearing too, the projects that come forth that are listed here, as well as projects that could come in the future, in the plan allows them to be eligible tax increment projects. But the actual finalization of things will be development agreements that the council will approve in the future. So you'll have opportunities and options that will come forward for you throughout the whole 15-year implementation period. But you will have the opportunity to review those, assistance from us on kind of looking at the internal financials, how they're looking, and does it a good fit for the use of tax increment? And you'll make individual decisions on that all throughout this 15-year implementation period. Okay. All right, so if we go over to page 7 and 8, these are 2 pages related to the projected cash flow of the tax increment district. And what I wanted to highlight for the council here is we see this as a mix of what we call pay-as-you-go incentives and some city, more related to the public infrastructure projects, city potential borrowing that then the TIF would be used to repay the principal and the interest. What you see, or when you see the phrase municipal revenue obligation, in this event, we're really looking at situations where we might work with a developer and say to the developer, if you create new value or achieve employment goals that we'd have for the tax increment district, you create new increment value up and above the current value on your parcel, we'll enter into an arrangement with you where you pay your taxes now, that higher tax, because of the increment value that was generated. When you pay your taxes, we'll pay that back, or a percentage of that back to you over a series of years as an incentive to help with your cash flow to get the project going in the first place. We like that model when we can use it, because it's one where the commitment from the city is the commitment of the newly created revenue, rather than more of a situation where you're going out and borrowing money, and if the TIF develops new revenue, you're able to use that revenue to pay the debt off. But in the worst case scenario where it isn't there, the city would have to find other funding sources to be able to pay that debt back, i.e. your tax levy or fund balance, those sort of other funding sources. So to the extent that we can use the pay-as-you-go and it fits with what we're trying to achieve, we see that as a primary funding source and a primary use for incentives in this particular tax increment district. Yeah, Bill?
Who defines the employment goals?
You guys.
Gotcha.
Yep. So there'll be discussions, and city staff would make recommendations to you on a development agreement. But ultimately, you make those decisions.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, if we go forward then to page number 9, I wanted to update the council on the process. Some of you who are on the Plan Commission and the mayor, who is also on the Joint Review Board, have been a part of these preliminary meetings. The Joint Review Board, for those that have not been through the tax increment process before, is made up of representatives from each of the taxing jurisdictions and then a 5th at-large person as well. And they have a very active role in reviewing the process and reviewing the project plan and the boundaries. They held an initial meeting on June 19th where we discussed exactly the same material we are discussing tonight with that group, and they picked a chairperson, which was it you, Mayor? I'm trying to remember. Yep, you were the mayor was the chairperson, and Judy is our 5th member, right?
Right.
Yep.
Judy Kelly.
Judy Kelly. On that same night, the Plan Commission held a public hearing, and after a couple of questions, the Plan Commission unanimously approved the boundaries and the project plan. So that moved it forward to tonight, where the council has an opportunity to hear the discussion about the proposed boundaries and project plan, ask questions, and then there's a resolution for you to act on this evening as well, should you choose. Ultimately then, should there be approval by the City Council this evening, the Joint Review Board is scheduled to meet on July 24th, where they will also have a resolution, and they can take that up at that time. So with that, I think we hit on a lot of high points of the district, but if there's certainly any other questions, I'd be happy to answer those, or if Mike's got anything else to add. Oh, yeah, maybe just to be specific, we've got the superintendent of schools from the Hudson School District. We've got Roger Larson from the county. And I forget the name of the woman from the technical college, but she's well aware of TIF. She's been involved in these before, and they're all the group, as well as Judy Kelly.
On page 16 of your plan, it says the improvements to the wastewater treatment facilities, although not within the half-mile radius. It is the wastewater treatment plant
in
is
the-
in the district.
Yeah, yeah.
So how does that, how does that affect things, or what are the benefits? Are there benefits to the wastewater treatment facilities, having it in the district and, or just having a district as it is?
So if you're finding, and a lot of times this is somewhat of an engineering analysis, but what we find in some tax increment districts that the new development is causing a need for either a different type of treatment or an expansion of the facility. And when that is the case, I think there's an opportunity at that point to charge a portion of an expansion of a plant to a tax increment district. And we see that in certain situations. The TIF, although it is within this district geographically, that type of an expense, that the plant doesn't necessarily have to be within the boundaries of the district.
Okay, so it really doesn't affect things that it's actually in the district, it would be eligible.
If
And there
there's
really isn't any
a-
difference in its eligibility because of that.
Correct. The implication is more that if the TIF itself is driving the need for changes of the treatment plant, that would be the justification. Having it located in the district itself would not be a requirement.
Okay.
Yep.
Anybody else?
I'll move to suspend the rules.
Got a motion to suspend and a second. Roll call.
Morissette?
Yes.
Alms? Yes. DeZiel?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Atkins Hoggett?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Move to adopt resolution.
Motion's approved, the rules are suspended.
Move to adopt resolution 9-18, sorry.
I know it's getting late.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Council.
Discussion of possible action on Resolution 10-18, resolution authorizing the use of unused proceeds of $3,110,000 of general obligation street improvement bonds, Series 2016A. Brenda.
Mayor and members of the council, we have $363,000 in bond proceeds remaining from the Vine Street project or the 2016A bonds. So you have a resolution in front of you with the request. We talked about this at the Finance Committee last meeting, to use those for Highway 35 water engineering, 10th Street water main repair project, and then the remaining funds after that for the 2019 Vine Street project.
Brenda, what was that number again? You got 3 million on the,
It's $363,000 is the bond proceeds that are remaining.
I wish we had 3 million.
Yeah, the bond issue was 3 million, but the proceeds are the
Okay.
363,000. And so in order to use those for other uses, instead of that Vine Street project from 2016, we need you to adopt that resolution.
Move to sus-
Suspend the rules.
Got a motion to suspend? Yeah.
See, she just found out you get paid by who makes the motion. It was Randy's big secret all these years.
Second?
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Morissette?
Yes.
Alms?
Yes.
DeZiel?
Yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Atkins Hoggett?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Motion's approved, rules are suspended.
Okay.
We're going to have to split you two.
Move to adopt resolution 10-18.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion?
I would like, I have a question. I know in my district, we have had I don't know exactly the details, but I do know I've heard that there's flooding in certain people's homes along that area, and when there is stormwater problems. And also, I have recently gotten a constituent asking about times during the winter where insufficient water service, and this may be unrelated, but they're asked to leave their water running in the wintertime so they cannot leave their homes in the winter. They can't make a trip because they can't leave. Is any of that going to fix? No.
The Vine Street project has been completed to the satisfaction of the city.
Correct, and I see the three uses, the 10th Street main water repair project that we're gonna use it for, and Vine Street project. So neither one of those would help out the people in my district that are having these problems.
Well, Sarah, we address those issues with that. Is this a new issue? We address those issues with the completion of the Vine Street project.
Well, I just
on
got the
Fifth
email.
Street, and
This is at,
I've been looking into that, and that should be something that
Separate
could
issue?
be put on on a future agenda.
okay, all right, I just
Yes.
wanted to
Yep.
know if that would be addressing that.
Yep.
Thanks.
No.
well, I want to know if it's, we're supposed to have remedied
Okay.
that problem.
Well, it depends on, no, the 6th Street area was where the
Is
issue
that-
was, right? Is that where this
Fifth
is?
and Sixth, yeah.
Yeah, this is,
It hasn't been remedied
600
everywhere.
Oak, 600 Oak
It
Street.
hasn't been?
No, because we should discuss this at another,
Well, yeah, that's a big concern. I mean,
yeah.
we just spent how many millions of dollars on?
Well, okay, so
That's the whole
I
purpose.
don't know about Vine Street, but the other area, there are other areas of the city that, I mean, all right, so when you redo the street and completely redo the water going into the homes, then that's the time to address this problem, because then it's the least expensive for the homeowners to do that.
Yeah.
But we only did Vine Street, we didn't do the other streets where this is affected.
So it's not related to Vine
No,
Street?
it's not,
Okay.
it's not related to the.
No, I just wondered if we could direct some of this $363,000 that we've just recently
No.
found to some of these other issues.
That would, for the capital projects for 19 and 20 are coming up.
Okay.
So that would
Or,
be,
yeah, 19 and 20, so I mean, that'd be something that could be addressed at that time.
yes.
All right, you good, Sarah?
Yep.
Anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Thanks, Brenda. Discussion possible action on change order to Walnut Street Bridge project.
Good evening again, and as discussed in the Finance Committee, work on the Walnut Street Bridge, we ran into some difficulties and need a change order. Mr. Johnson from SCH gave a narrative and some of the issues that we had with the bridge, some options, and possible funding sources. So would the whole council like to hear his explanation again, or?
Is everybody here for the Finance Committee meeting? Everybody heard it? Okay.
Move we approve the change order.
Second.
On a motion second to approve, any discussion?
I do have a discussion point. So I need advice of our city attorney. So I had a constituent that emailed me and said that I believe it's under Wisconsin state law 62.15 for public works. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it basically says there's an increased quantity clause. Contracts may include clauses providing for increasing the quantity of construction required in the original contract by an amount not to exceed 15% of the original contract price.
That's
So-
just a decision after the fact to increase the work that's going to be done under the contract. This is a different situation.
Okay.
That's a situation where, oh, we're out here, let's add this road onto our street maintenance or project contract, and it can't exceed 15%. This was a situation where they discovered changed conditions,
Okay.
which increased the cost of repairing the deck on the Walnut Street Bridge. So
it
it's a
doesn't
different,
apply.
right.
Okay.
It was something that was not expected, and no one had any control over it.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not
Nope,
overstepping here.
you're
so-
good.
Okay.
Everybody good? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion possible action on snow storage operations at Outlot 2 in St. Croix Business Park for lease agreement and for funding source for improvements.
Actually, we have two different issues we'd like to discuss tonight. The first issue we'd like to bring up to Common Council is A recommendation that the Public Works Committee made back on May 21st to look at outlot number 2, which is up in the business park, just adjacent to the gravel pit, Monarch Mimbach Quarry. We're looking for an area that we can use, first off, for temporary snow storage. As you all know, that we've used the old dog track site for several years, many years actually, for putting some of our snow from cul-de-sacs, downtown snow areas, and parking lots. We also use the area up in the parking lot of Grandview Park for another area. Since then, or this year, we've lost the dog park because of the redevelopment for that area. And also we've put a dog park up in Grandview Park, and that area gets used even during the winter, so we've lost a portion of that. Public Works Committee would like the council to consider a lease agreement for that option. We've had Mike Johnson draft a lease agreement with option to purchase that property for future facilities for a public works garage. So tonight we just asked that we would have Catherine review that lease agreement and for a temporary area for snow storage and possible purchase of the land for public works facility building.
Yeah, I saw a draft option agreement, not a draft lease agreement, I don't believe.
I don't mind drafted, maybe you can speak on that.
Yeah, so I drafted I represent the Business Park Board as their secretary as well. So I drafted an option to purchase and presented that to the Public Works Committee. I wasn't there, but it was presented to Public Works, whereby an option would be presented to the Business Park Board after the council took action on it. And what that option to purchase, what it was is a 5-year exclusive option to the city, and the cost of that would be just the annual property tax payments for that property. So there's a carrying cost because of the nonprofit or the status of the organization of the Business Park Board. So it's, I think, like $5,000 and change a year in taxes. So there's a carrying cost that the business park always adds on to a sale price if they sell a lot in the business park if they own it. So basically, the thought would be, well, if the city's going to tie that up and use it for snow storage, that, you know, they should just pay the carrying costs that we would otherwise charge. But obviously, that hasn't been presented to the Business Park Board yet. So then the lease agreement that would go with that, which has not been yet drafted, would be for no consideration. It would just be go ahead and make your improvements, but again, subject to Business Park Board approval.
You got a motion?
And are they aware of the proposed improvements, the business park?
Well, they will be once we, obviously, it needs to come to them all at one time.
Okay, but that hasn't been part of the discussion.
We've talked about it and, hey, would this potentially be an option to consider?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're proposing $120,000 cost, correct? For the improvements?
I'm getting to that.
Okay,
Okay.
Sorry.
It's significant
I didn't mean to-
improvements. That's why I wanted to know whether the business park has discussed that.
Did you say 120,000?
That's what's in the issue sheet. On those,
There was 2 issue sheets.
there's a change order, so it's on page 127. Well, that's what's on mine anyway. So the second issue sheet talks about funding source for the improvements. And then the second page shows the amount. Change order number 2.
So the first option, the discussion is acquiring the property. If we would get this property, we would need an area that we can put the snow. We need a hard surface to put the snow, a temporary road or an asphalt road, and an area that we're finding out if we get it less than an acre, we wouldn't need storm ponds and things like that. As one option, we could consider a change order from the Hanley Road Street project. And we did talk to the contractor, and he would be open to use the same unit prices for common excavation and base aggregate and asphalt and some erosion control and some seeding mulching. So we could include that as a change order from the Hanley Road project if we care to do that. Although I do not have a funding source for that, I don't know if Brenda could speak on any options that we would have for that. But again, this is something that we've talked about the last several years, that this issue was coming, and we have to make a decision prior to the snow flying in November and December. Because I don't have any options to put any snow anywhere else.
Why do you need asphalt for snow melting?
Good question. We could dump the snow right on the dirt or gravel. It's going to have debris in it, glass, cans, plastic bottles. It's pretty difficult to clean up. After looking at the site, though, the layout of the land and visually seeing where this area would be, and possibly where our new building would be someday. It's an area that we could probably, keep this for this purpose and, not disturb it, and we can use it for future areas for dumping snow.
Are you leasing or buying? I'm confused there.
Well, it's what he's proposing is a lease with an option to purchase. And, I mean, the only reason you want to consider the cost of these improvements, consider whether you do actually want to probably buy this property for use as a public works building. Otherwise, I don't know that you'd want to put in $120,000 improvements on leased property.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you need more discussion on that issue, the option.
much does it
It could
cost?
either be a lease or a lease and option to purchase, but the improvements, you want to know you're going to have some ability to control that property.
And like I said, I think my main focus here would be able to bring something to the business park board to show them and then find out if they're even interested.
Mhm.
They might, if we were to market we'd generally sell it $160 a square foot, 50,000 if we were to sell that as a business park. But they need to have that discussion and understand what the need of the city is, be presented with a proposal. And then I would say at that point, it comes back to the council. And I think the council then has to make a decision whether or not they can make those improvements on that site or if they want to.
So really, the lease and option to purchase should come back to the council because
Correct.
you're going to have a discussion on cost and just whether you want to consider
So what do you need from us
investing in that property.
tonight?
I just authorization to work with Catherine to get the lease agreement and
Draft
option to
to come
purchase,
back.
option to purchase drafted to come back and then get
Is there a
approval
motion?
on it.
I'd motion that.
I'll second.
Got a motion, a second for approval. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion's approved. Where were we? Discussion of possible action on letter of engagement, Cooley Road retaining wall.
I think that was decided at Finance Committee that we should visit with other engineering firms, SEH, and see what their costs would be for a letter of, for design and engineering costs for that. Talk with Bolton and Mink to see if we can sharpen or shorten the scope of their project to just the damaged area and possibly do some temporary repairs to that area to make it safe and passable, the sidewalk safe and passable.
Was that going to include at all any type of discussion with or about the owner's responsibility for some of this?
I did put in there, property markers, but I didn't put in ownership, did I?
To try to locate the property corners, or if not, talk with the owners and otherwise get costs on a certified survey.
Well, I think find out if there's any responsibility on
Yeah.
their part for damage in the first place, and to try to remediate that once we repair the wall.
Yeah, so I'll restate my motion from finance, but adding on to it, ownership. Defining
Of the
ownership,
property where the retaining wall is
the
located.
damaged retaining property wall, yeah.
Well, and whether use by the property owner has increased the
Yes.
damage to the retaining wall. I don't know, I don't have any facts really on that use, but maybe,
It's potentially, it could have.
I
but,
don't, there's
you know,
no
like
doubt
I-
in my mind.
well, yeah, we can look into that. And
I would think that would come out of the engineering study.
Yeah.
I'll second the
It should be an
motion.
expectation on our part. That's what caused the problem.
What
and
caused
what you have to
the
do
wall to fail?
it should be part of the alleviation, so.
All right. Everybody got that?
So we're going to ask SEH to provide a quote, ask Bolton and Bank to relook at their numbers, potentially provide a smaller project, right?
Narrow the scope of the project. for
Project
the
down
damage
to the damage, and make a determination of ownership, so we know
Of the
who's
property,
in question, and then determine whether there's been an impact on the structure because of what the current owner has done with it.
Right.
Helps make it sound prettier, but I just wanted to make sure I had all
Got
the
it.
points.
Everybody got it? Do we have so Randy, is that your motion?
Yep.
I seconded it.
Got a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on proposal for city engineer position.
Well, that was a timely way to put that on the agenda after we
No,
had that
I tell you, you may not want to say anything because somebody did a great job here for you not long ago.
discussion. Brenda?
Oh.
Devin? I kid.
The Finance Committee recommended going ahead with the position.
Very good. Yep, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's become so apparent as we work on all of these projects, just even the loss of the halftime position, just how much we miss that technical resource. You know, and I think even our consultants that are in the crowd tonight would say the same thing. City of Hudson, you know, you need an engineer to help you work through all of these really complicated and complex issues. I believe that we found a way to do it in a way that's pretty almost essentially budget neutral. So I wholeheartedly recommend approval along with the Finance Committee.
All right, do we have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second.
Got a motion, a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on an application for conditional use permits for filling and grading within a slope preservation zone and structural erosion control measures in a slope preservation zone at 109 2nd Street, River City Center, LLC.
I'm going to ask that Mr. David Schofield, one of our consulting engineers, come up and explain that in a relatively timely manner.
Executive summary.
Poor man, he's been here all night.
Yeah, hopefully this body is familiar with the River City Center project. If not, the applicant is here. They are looking at doing some improvements that are technically in the riverway. On the south side of the building, they're proposing to regrade an area that's over 12% slopes right now. And they're proposing to add 2 retaining walls, one along the west side of the building and one from the south side of the building out to Buckeye Street. Those 2 acts, the grading and the additional retaining walls, in your code and also in DNR code requires a conditional use permit due to the location near the river. So we were at the Plan Commission meeting 2 weeks ago. It was recommended for approval. It came before this body here tonight. So.
I move we approve the slope preservation application, you conditional use permit.
Second.
Got a motion, second for approval. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Discussion of possible action on floodway study from portion of St. Croix River.
Are you on
It's awesome.
staff?
What's that?
Not yet.
What's your billable hour?
Finance Committee also recommended approval of this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think everybody heard this, right?
sure.
Right.
Okay. Any questions? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second?
Got a motion second to approve. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Great job, Dave. Thank you. Okay, appointments. Here, pass those down. You can just read them off. I'm printing these out, I might as well. Yeah, please.
With the appointment of Alderperson Atkins Hoggett, there's been, to fill the vacancies on the committees, Mayor O'Connor, the Finance Committee will be Mayor O'Connor, Bill Alms, Joyce Hall, Randy Morissette. Public Safety will be Randy Morissette as Chair, Bill Alms and Joyce Hall. And Public Works will be Jim Weber as Chair, Sarah Atkins Hoggett, and Paul DeZiel. And then he would need confirmation on the appointment of Sarah Atkins Hoggett to the Urban Forestry Board.
You want formal approval?
Yeah.
Need approval on the
Just
Urban
that.
Forestry Board.
Move to approve.
Second?
Got a motion second for approval. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion's approved. I don't have anything. Anybody got anything?
I just want to thank the boosters. Great show.
Oh, yeah, it was good.
Fireworks,
Yep. Thank you for
All the
that.
hard work they did.
Yeah, good job.
We have set the date for Tom's Farewell Party, Wednesday, August 29th, afternoon. I'll send out invitation 1 to 5, 2 to 6. I'll figure that out yet, but, so Wednesday, August 29th. And we'll be seeing Tom on a limited basis going forward, so. Bill.
Oh.
All right, is there a motion?
To adjourn.
Second.
A motion second to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's adjourned, or stand adjourned. Motion's approved. Thanks, everybody.